Welcome back, guys, to the Grateful Living Podcast. Today, I'm thankful to have Dani here with me. Dani is a mental health advocate. Dani, thank you so much for being on.
Hi, Arnav. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful and I'm so impressed with everything that you're doing and how open you are.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate the kind words. Um, let's set the scene for everybody. Talk about where you grew up, what your family situation was like, what type of kid you were, things like that.
Okay. So I grew up in your town, Acton. Um, Definitely an interesting place to grow up. I grew up in a multiracial household. So my dad's half Black and half Spanish, and my mom's Chinese, which was also really interesting. Growing up in Acton wasn't the easiest. And as a kid, I people would probably describe me as always happy, always laughing. People would always tell me that I have like 10 plus laughs and that they were like
Yeah.
always commenting on that. And I don't know, I just thought that it was definitely interesting because starting in like junior high, early high school, people always saw me as the happy person. But then internally, I didn't feel that way. Um, and so yeah, it was I think that happens for a lot of people. Like you put on this, but I honestly I didn't really feel like I was faking anything. Like I did was genuinely laughing and genuinely happy, but at the same time I was super depressed, which I feel like people can be confused about, like um seeing someone that's happy and not understanding that they could be internally struggling too.
It, you can always, I don't know if this is the case with you, but I think for me, you're always happy with people around you, but then sometimes when you go back home alone,
Right.
it can get tougher. I think that
Right. The
definitely.
distractions.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
um
so you talked about growing up in a multiracial household. Uh, I guess how much of that story do you know of your parents? Like, was it tough for them? Especially, I'm not sure when they got married, but do you know if it
um
was tough for them? If
so
society.
for my dad, he grew up in Puerto Rico and Spain. In Puerto Rico, I feel he would say that it was kind of different because a lot of people around him were also brown. My mom definitely um, felt it for sure. And I think Acton, especially, is more so, in my opinion. A lot of people, I'm sure you've heard the phrases like get Asians out of Acton, why there's so many Asians in Acton, coming from a lot of families and kids. So that definitely took a toll on us. But it wasn't something that was really discussed. I think for me, I don't know. I feel like people say that out loud all the time, but then being multiracial, people like profile you as what they think you are. So they probably feel more comfortable being racist in front of you because they don't realize
Yeah,
that you're what they're being racist about. But
yeah,
so it's definitely interesting, but and not easy.
yeah,
But I had a lot of people that I could talk to, my sister in particular, who got it. So
yeah. How did you manage? I'm sure there were like family I don't know how many traditions your parents each individually had, but was it weird trying to manage like you know totally different traditions and merging the two or anything like that?
um not really. It's I guess my anxiety is kind of confusing. It's all mush, but it wasn't I guess our cultures mostly revolve around food, I'd say, like
Mm.
tradition wise. So it was just a lot of Chinese and Spanish and Puerto Rican food all the time. Kind of just a big party. So
When did you do you remember when you were kind of aware of being a little bit different, like growing up in a multi-rate? Do you remember what age that started?
um, definitely early elementary school. I'd say around third grade, second grade. Kids were already making comments. I know my sister started in kindergarten, kids were making fun of her skin, being different. And I remember in third grade, people would make fun of me or say things like, oh, he likes you even though you're Asian and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It starts really young. And then at that point, I started getting to the mindset of, oh, like that means that being Asian is bad or being this way is bad. And I internalized it a lot. And that definitely contributed to my depression and anxiety, which I'll go into my story about that, but definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. What do you think for, I guess, for, people that don't grow up biracial, I guess, what has been the biggest struggle, I guess, throughout your life with it?
I'd say feeling like I don't belong anywhere. I'm not Asian enough. I'm not Hispanic enough. I'm not Black enough, um, quote unquote, to really fit into a group. I'm not white. And so it's been hard to feel like I have a lot of identity confusion my
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. 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 No. Yeah.
um, and I feel like almost I'm not enough of any of those things. And then when there's like racial attacks on one of my identities, it's almost like I don't even feel like I can claim it because I'm not even a full, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of
So it's
sense.
very
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah. Because you can't. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense.
But I mean, I do have a few multiracial friends, and they feel the same way, and so that's definitely comforting. Like a mutual understanding, which all
Yeah.
people of color have with each other. So
Yeah. And you talked about it a little bit, but mental health is something that has been a part of your life. Do you remember at what age maybe started becoming more of a serious thing?
yeah. So I can't remember exactly how old I was. I remember it was 2010. So I think it started a little bit end of eighth grade, going into beginning of freshman year. I can't really pin any one thing that caused it, but even since I was little, I had anxiety. I wasn't diagnosed, but I had a worry box, and I was always worried about different things, and I'd write them down in order to feel like I could throw them away or rip them up.
Yeah.
Um, but um, so the racism piece that we talked about, and like feeling like confused about my identity and hearing daily attacks on my identities, but not feeling like I could claim them, and then also just I don't know, not feeling like I belonged. Um, and then also my parents got divorced. That started at the end of eighth grade, going into freshman year, and I felt really confused about that. And then something that I want to get into later that we talked about was being in an unhealthy relationship. I was in an abusive relationship at a really young age. That's
Yeah.
very young.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to recognize it when you're in it. And there's not really any education that we got, in my
Yeah.
opinion,
Yeah.
on like red flags or anything like that or support. So um, this boy like made me feel worthless, and he would call me names and get really angry at really weird things. And then it just kind of sticks with you.
Yeah.
Um, so later I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, but I'd say it was a mix of that and like the experiences that I was currently in, and then um, resources available to me, which there were resources, but I had no idea they existed. And no one really told me they existed at that time.
For
Um,
context, you're like 14 years old, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
14,
So this is a
15.
lot.
Yeah.
to take.
So, so with all of that, I didn't feel like I felt alone. I didn't think there was anyone I could turn to, or that I thought completely like weird. Like I didn't realize this was a prevalent thing. Um, and so I started having suicidal thoughts. And that went on for a few months.
Do you think it was you were just overwhelmed? What why do you think like what was
I think definitely I felt overwhelmed. I was definitely depressed, and I didn't realize that there was a way to get help. Um, I thought I'd be better off dead. And I feel like I just wanted the pain to be taken away. I
yeah.
felt alone. This boy was telling me I was worthless. My family was splitting up. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a lot to handle.
But
I guess so with the divorce, what was the hardest part about that?
I think a lot of things, obviously,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
the unknown. And now looking back, I think it's way better.
Yeah.
My parents are both so much happier, and everything just works a lot better. But in the moment, it was really scary. The unknown was really scary, and feeling like I'm not going to get enough time with either parent now, or there's things that will be missed out on, like family dinners, which I loved, which don't won't wouldn't happen anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What for you, what were as you look back on your relationship, what were some signs that maybe it was getting abusive, and what can, people out there who are currently in relationships kind of learn from your experience?
um, so I would say that the person was very controlling. If I didn't answer a text within like 5 minutes, it'd be like the most anger you could expect from anyone. Like it
Yeah.
was, if I didn't want to do something at 14, 15 sexually, I was called names and yelled at. A lot of things. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess so. The person out there that might be doubting it, I guess they'll say, "Why didn't you just get out?"
Exactly. And I'm in nursing school now,
Yeah,
which I didn't tell you, but I am doing a lot of projects on abusive relationships and domestic violence. And well, this doesn't pertain to me, but you don't, well, this pertains to me. You don't really realize it when you're in it. And I think once you're out of it, it's like a huge weight lifted off your shoulders. But when you're in it, you either don't really know any better, you don't, this person's telling you they love you and treating you horribly, and it's just all you know. Um, and for domestic violence situations, it's often safer to stay, which is something that people don't realize, because that's when someone who's violent lashes out more when you try to leave. Um, I'm trying to think of what else you said. What'd you say?
no, no, it just like you know the 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 I guess. And then
Oh,
what steps did you take to get out of it? I guess like you know
Um, so the other thing that I feel like reason I stayed is because I didn't know any better, and we didn't really have healthy relationship education. And also my peers, not they didn't know any better either. Like they didn't realize that it was bad either.
and
And
this is
also,
probably the first time. Sorry to cut. Is this probably the first time you've let your guard down and you've been in a relationship?
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
too.
So that too, and then also, sorry, I have like so many weird, awful relationship examples. Not
Yeah, yeah.
just that person, but um, I think it all kind of ties together. Senior year of high school, I was actually sexually assaulted,
Oh man.
and I think there's a lot that people don't really hold people accountable for, and it's an uncomfortable conversation, and it turns into, oh, but they're my friend. Um, how can I forgive like the good things they've done for me? Um, or just that they can't really see their friend in that light, and then they just ignore it. Um, and again, we don't have that education at a young age to know really how to have those challenging conversations, how to hold our friends accountable, um, how to just even realize or notice red flags for ourselves and for our peers.
Yeah. I guess for the young girls growing up now, what would you say to them on handling all this? This is a lot, but
Yeah, sorry.
uh,
Um, I mean, relationships should feel good. They shouldn't hurt. There's other people. You're not alone. Um, One of my mottos now is choose people who choose you. The person that is hurting you is not choosing you, they're hurting you. And whether that be with relationships or friendships, it's important to give your energy to the people that make you feel good and not to the people that make you feel shitty about yourself. Um, and that you're strong, and it's not your fault.
yeah,
Number one, it's not your fault. And that there's resources available. And I can't tell you how many people have said, well, obviously the Me Too movement, but even with suicidal ideation or being sexually assaulted, when I speak out about it, I get 50 plus messages of people saying Me Too,
yeah,
um, and sharing with me their experience.
yeah,
It's so prevalent. And I think the most important thing is to have the conversations, normalize having conversations about it, normalize talking about what a healthy relationship looks like, so people from a young age can start at a young age, like setting those boundaries and advocating for their friends.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah. No, no, that's great advice. Uh, I guess I don't know how much you want to go into it with the sexual assault, but like, you know, uh, what I guess how can maybe people prevent situations like that or prevent themselves from, like, was there, as you look back on it, like, was there anything that, and I don't know if you could have, like, I don't know if you were in the position, but like, uh, yeah, I don't know.
um I think the way to prevent it is to hold the people that do it accountable, and um again have earlier education on all of that, and even like I did, this is like a controversial statement, but some of the research I did was that instead of calling people abusers, like no one's going to identify as that. No one's going to want to identify as someone that's willing to do something like that. So they're not going to be willing to go seek help and say, oh, I abuse women. Um, so instead, phrasing it as someone who might do this behavior, there's help for you. Like let's work on this. Let's change this. It's not okay.
Yeah,
Um, which I mean, it's definitely a confusing topic.
yeah,
But in the end, what we want to change is the person that's doing the behavior.
yeah. No, that's a great point. Uh, you talked about suicidal ideations and things of that nature. How close have you been?
So like I said before, around 2010, it was December, in that like dark time, I started having suicidal ideation. I remember Googling it for a few months, like methods, and um, I started like bringing it up almost, but not in a serious way, to friends to see how they'd react. But as you know, a huge problem in our society is that it's joked about so often, and that language is used in a joking manner so often that, like, how would anyone have known that there was a problem? Um, So no one took me seriously. Like, why would they? And then I attempted in 2010 and I was hospitalized. And it was a really horrible place, actually. And psych resources are so limited, especially for children. So it was actually one of the worst experiences of my life, and a few people that I know actually can relate to me that I connected with afterwards in Acton that went to the same place. But I was actually hospitalized again senior year, and that was one of the best experiences of my life. So it's really a hit or miss with psych treatment, like inpatient. But that's why it's so important to normalize prevention, like focus on prevention, the normalize therapy, normalize having the conversations early before we have to get to that point. Um,
Do
yeah.
you, this might be a tough question, but you mentioned your friends. Do you think there was anything they could have done, or, was it like, could you have like hung out with them alone, like with one of them alone, and got something off of your chest? I mean, or was it just the circumstances were just too overwhelming? You're a 14-year-old kid. Like, when you look back on it, do you think your friends could have helped?
I think at that young, maybe not. Like, we were so young. I don't think, one, I didn't have any resources. They didn't have any resources. I don't think they would have known what to do, nor should they have had to, nor should I have had to. But
Yeah, yeah,
now, 100%. And since like the senior year hospitalization that I talked about, because I had already kind of been through it and I was older, um, I knew it was okay to reach out to my friends, to reach out for help. But I think because I was so young freshman year and it was literally never a thing I had ever heard of before or talked about with anyone, I don't think so,
yeah,
to be honest.
yeah,
But that first hospitalization, I came back to school a completely different person. And I came back and I felt like the school was a completely different place. Like, I was noticing before I went, I didn't really notice that there were a bunch of people around me struggling. But then I think after having that experience, when I came back, I saw that like there were so many people around me struggling and no one was really doing anything about it. Um, and so I started reaching out to them and to faculty to get conversations started. And here we are today. We
yeah,
have a long way to
yeah,
go,
yeah,
but
yeah. I
it's all about getting the conversation started like you're doing.
yeah. I guess as you look back, you know, if there is, a teenage girl going through some of the things that you were going through, n- what advice would you give to her?
Um, a lot of things. I think when you're in it, it feels so big. And then years later you look back and you're like, what?
Yeah,
Not what, but some of the things that you make so big, they feel so big and they are so big, and that's valid. But then you get through them and you get through your next hurdle and you get through your next challenge. And each time you get through that, you gain new perspectives and new insights and new coping skills. And that helps you for the next challenge. And looking back, I'm like, I feel sad that I doubted myself so much. But like now I've been battling anxiety and depression off and on, and I feel like all the highs and lows, like I said, you gain new insight, and I just feel like that there's beauty in that.
yeah. After that eighth grade experience, obviously, I'm sure some family and friends found out. What was that process of navigating, people thinking you're weak or whatever they're thinking about you?
So that's definitely one of the reasons I didn't speak up the first time. And then once I did, after I came back, um, it was nothing like I thought it would be. Everyone was so nice and a lot of people were like, me too. Um, no one was judgmental at all. No one was judgmental. Everyone's going through something. I think at that young age, it's really hard for people to wrap their head around, but they also can understand. Um, yeah, I don't
Yeah, yeah.
know.
Can you? I guess when did you start therapy?
So I started therapy after that initial hospitalization, and it was horrible.
Okay.
You
Why?
really have to find a therapist that clicks with you. So I didn't click with that one, and I didn't click with the next one. But
Mm.
my third one, so don't give up hope. My third one, I still text her and FaceTime her to this day. She has helped me through so much. I really owe her a lot. She um, has been with me for 10 years.
Wow,
Um,
that's awesome.
and I don't know what I would do without her. It's so
Yeah.
helpful. Even like if I'm noticing that I'm starting to spiral, I'll be like, oh, text her. Nip this in the bud before it gets any farther.
For
Um,
yeah, continue.
oh, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, I've mentioned all the coping skills that she's taught me. One of my favorite is I tend to ruminate, which I know a lot of other people do. And I get stuck on a thought and then it becomes really big and I can't get around it, I
Yeah.
guess. And I put a lot of energy into something that a lot of other people, it would go right over their head. Um, so for example, if I feel like I've accidentally hurt someone's feelings, even if I didn't, and even if it's like a really
Minor.
minor thing, I can
Yeah.
go from thinking I'm a good person to feeling like I deserve to die in like
Yeah.
10 seconds.
Yeah. Just
Um,
feel awful. Yeah.
yeah. And so obviously that's really scary. But it's important to not give it weight. And so one of the metaphors, the thought weight is what I'm saying. So one of the metaphors my therapist taught me is this bus metaphor where your thoughts are the passengers, you're the bus driver, um, and actually I probably should have pulled it up, but um, they you're the bus driver. You can't discriminate against who gets on the bus. So negative thoughts, positive thoughts, they get on the bus, they have their ticket, they can get on, but you can't let them drive. And so basically, in simple terms, thoughts aren't facts. You can't control them, but don't let them take over because, like I said, they're not facts. Um, and try not to give them so much power.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice for someone who you know is hesitant to try therapy. Can you talk about what have been some of the benefits for you? Where because a lot of people will say, "Oh, like I'll just journal," or "Oh, well, I'll just talk to a friend and spill it out." Like can you talk to? Is I think a lot of people hesitate on seeking
Mm-hmm.
professional help.
With the right therapist, and even though it might be challenging to find them, sorry,
You're good.
they they can help you realize things that you may not realize, and they can help you kind of, well, obviously give you coping skills like I just talked about. But it's also just nice to have someone that has an objective opinion. Um, and also, like, I don't know about other people, I'm sure. If you have anxiety about like a relationship or a situation, um, but you don't really feel comfortable, or you don't want to like if you have anxiety about someone but you don't want to talk about that situation to someone else and make it like a thing, I guess they're a perfect third party objective opinion on what to do. Um, or I don't know if that
Yeah,
answers
yeah.
the question,
No,
but
no, no. And I think that people feel uh I don't know why people are so afraid to try it, but
I
I think
think it can be scary. I think it's hard for a lot of people to open up. And then once you do, it's like this catharsis of like weights lifted off of you. And I think it's also important to have someone that you can see on a regular basis, or that you can message. Like I said, they're trained. Like sometimes, I mean, obviously, I'm so grateful for my friends, but I don't always want to dump so much onto them. And I just like having that objective um, relationship.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's I guess for you, what was what makes a good therapist versus not a good fit therapist?
Um, I feel like you just know, like if they're helping you or they're not. I think it can be confusing. I had a different therapist while I was out at UMass, and it just really wasn't working for me either. I think it's just people click or they don't. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
really
Yeah,
know.
yeah. No, no. Sounds good. I so you I guess you talked about 8th grade and then again senior year of high school. What do you think happened there? Um and cuz I think I think one of the things that people don't realize is it's an everyday journey. It's not like, oh boom, like I'm good, like I'm done with mental health problems like just cuz I'm seeing a therapist. Like it's something that stays with you um for your life basically.
Yeah. Um, I can't even really remember what triggered it. I just remember feeling um, feeling the suicidal ideation coming back. But because I had made those steps and was already talking about it, and now like made resources available, like researched my resources and was already talking to a bunch of people about ways to help others, I just immediately, as soon as I started feeling that way, I went straight to my counselor's office and I said, I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
And like I said, thoughts are not facts. So when I have the thought that I want to die, I just keep telling myself it's not true, it's not true, it's thoughts aren't facts, thoughts aren't facts. Let's figure this out and make sure that you're safe, um, before it spirals. And
Yeah.
just making sure that you do reach out for help at the beginning.
Yeah. No. You know, you had a friend, um, Meg, unfortunately pass away. I guess was there that was I don't know, but what do you? It's a tough question, but I guess just what do you that experience and losing her? How has that you know changed your life and things like that?
It's changed my life a lot. I remember when it happened, I screamed at the top of my lungs for over an hour. Um, and then like the next few months, like or the next week or so back home was a lot of processing with people back home and supporting each other. That was my first loss for someone that I felt really connected to. And it was obviously so horrible. Um, and I mean, you knew Meg, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah. She is just so special and so strong and such an amazing person and friend. And there's like no really way to just describe her bubbly presence of just happiness
Yeah.
that like radiates to everyone. And she was so thoughtful and caring to everyone and anyone, and never judged, never. She's just very special.
Yeah, no,
um,
she was
and welcoming and open with her love. It was like endless. And losing her was hard and scary and confusing. She was one of the people that I had connected with after coming home from that first hospitalization, and realizing that I wasn't alone, and talking to other people that were going through the same thing and wanting to do something for our peers. So we really connected during that time. Um, it it obviously breaks my heart, and it breaks everyone's heart. And um, I mean, I think about her every day.
yeah.
I see her in the sun, and I see her in. It's something I can't really explain, and I'd never felt before. But she's with me, and when I need advice, I will look to her, and I miss her. Um, and it's really heartbreaking still.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, and I'm not sure if you have the answer, but why do people stay silent? Why do people fight these battles on their own?
I would say a lot of it is stigma. A lot of it is fear for being looked at differently, fear of what you're currently battling. Um, it can be, obviously, depression and anxiety is all consuming and pervasive and affects all aspects of your life. And it's really hard to see the other side when you're in it. Um, and it's freaking frustrating when you have to keep going through all these hurdles. Um, Honestly, I forgot your question already. Why do
I
people not ask for help? Was that it?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Why do we fight silently?
Why do we fight silently? Um, I'd say the stigma mostly.
Yeah.
We're we're we've gotten better, but we're still not having conversations like we should. Um, it's a lot harder to say you have a mental health issue than you have a physical one, um, because society just they view you differently for
Yeah.
that. Um,
There's an aspect of perfection too, right? That people just don't want to
yeah,
show any wounds or any that,
right,
especially with social media, that everything's
right,
perfect, everything's
right.
good,
And then the
no
other thing
flaws.
going off that is society's definition of strength is, like you said, to look perfect, to look like nothing's wrong, to power through it. When really being strong is saying, "Oh, I am struggling," and being open about it. That's strong too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of people, as we talked about, struggle, but most don't open up. You've been pretty open and, along the way have helped a lot of people. What made you want to open up?
I think it was started with that first time I came back from the hospital. Um, and I was noticing things that other people that don't go through that don't notice. Um, and I realized how big of a problem it was. Um, and I didn't want anyone to have to go through what I went through alone. And I think once we start talking up about it, speaking up about it, we all realize that everyone's struggling sometimes. And Um, I literally am so bad at interviews. I forget
No,
your
you're
question.
fine. You're fine. No, no, you're good. You're good.
What was your question?
I um sorry, I don't remember.
That's okay.
Yeah. I guess you want to talk about like where you are now and how you're doing?
Sure. So I'm good. I'm in nursing school and I studied public health and psych in college, which I think was super helpful also in kind of understanding psych, especially and understanding what was going on with me. And like I said, therapy has helped me so much with gaining coping skills. I talked about the bus metaphor. Another thing I like to do is schedule a date with my worries. So most of the things we worry about don't actually happen, um, but we're ruminating about it anyway. So if I am worried about something on a Monday, I'll say that probably won't happen, but I'm going to worry about it anyway. I'm going to say, Dani, schedule that worry about this on Wednesday, and then if most likely, and so every time that thought comes back, I'm like, stop, you'll worry about it Wednesday, and then most likely by Wednesday it won't even matter anymore. So something like that helps me
Yeah.
a lot. um, like I said before, I'm doing much better simply because I have this new motto of choose people who choose you. Healthy relationships are key in friendships and romantic relationships. Um, it was something I struggled a lot with until now, and now I have a really great boyfriend, and I'm really happy with the friendships that I have in my life. But in the past, I let unhealthy relationships and friendships hold a lot of weight in my head. And I'm just slowly but surely learning that people that make you feel horrible about yourself are simply not your people. And it's important to stand up for yourself and put yourself first and just not let that negativity into your space. And so just I now channel more of my energy to the people that make me feel good about myself. And I think that can be really hard for people to navigate. um, Another thing that's helped me be where I am now is practicing self compassion daily. It's like talking to yourself as you would a friend. So if you're I mean, a lot of us talk to ourselves really meanly, and are really hard on ourselves. But if you practice self compassion and speak to yourself more gently, that actually can have a lot of effect on your headspace. And then also, I don't think I'd be where I am today if I didn't get the help that I needed and or take breaks, like mental breaks for myself. In college, I had to take a break from school in junior year. I was so anxious, and anxiety obviously manifests differently in everyone, but I hadn't eaten for like 10 days, and I was too anxious. I would just gag it all. It would just I couldn't eat anything. And so I was like, you know what? You have to take the time for yourself. School can wait, work can wait, everything can wait. You have to put yourself first and allow yourself to take those breaks. I decided to go home for a little bit, and obviously it all worked out fine. But I needed that time to be okay
Yeah.
and take the time to be okay and focus on me. And like I said before, we have to put aside what being strong looks like. It's not ignoring the things that are hurting you. It's facing them,
Right.
and being open about them and being vulnerable. And it's okay to be not okay sometimes. Um, but you have to slow down sometimes in order to slow down the negative thoughts and the anxiety. And like I said, each time you grow more. So now, with all those setbacks or all of those challenges that I faced, I feel like now I'm just stronger than ever because I've learned something else each of those times, and it's given me perspectives that I can use for each new struggle. Um, and yeah.
Uh, you know, I wanted to add one more question. I've I have friends who have also, been sexually assaulted or raped, and um you're now in a relationship. How was that process of, because just because that's such a traumatizing experience, right? And how do you, I guess, how have you allowed trust? How have you, like,
Slowly.
yeah, yeah,
um, the guy I'm dating now, his name's Steve, and he's really great. I just am open about it, and I remember calling him and feeling like I wanted to have that conversation early on. And he was just so great. Made me feel comfortable, made me feel heard. And he knows like what triggers me, and like um, is just very respectful. And I think, and from the beginning, he was super respectful. Um, and I think, which is sad, but it's rare. I think it's definitely hard. I actually, before I met him in college, I was having a really hard time still with this, with the assault. That was like 4 years later, 5 years later. And now I feel kind of, it never really goes away, but at the 4 year, 5 year mark, I was still like pretty hyper vigilant um, about it. And it's ceased a little bit, but it's definitely still there.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but just, I think hearing that reassurance and having someone that's so respectful and being able to be open about it obviously goes a long way.
yeah, yeah. Um, that was great advice. I guess we kind of went all over the place and different
Yeah.
tangents and things like that. As you know, for me, I thought this was a great, open, and honest conversation that I think we're both just showing it's it's fine, to struggle, and it's fine to seek professional help, right? Like if you have a problem, whether mental or physical, it's good to seek a solution and not be um, afraid of that. Um, was there anything we didn't hit on that you wanted to talk about?
And I'm just so grateful that you're having these conversations. I think that's where we start, and that's where we need to keep going. And just focusing on the connection and looking out for people that you care about, sending a random text, calling a friend randomly when you're in the car just to see how they're doing, looking out for each other, and telling them that you love them sincerely and often. Um, and also, like, even for the people that you love, but even with strangers, like, why not randomly compliment someone that you pass on the street just to
Yeah, yeah.
brighten their
Spread
day?
love. Yeah,
Yeah, just spread love.
yeah. Awesome. Well, Danny, I just want to thank you so much for being on. It was cool. It was cool. I don't see anybody doing this type of conversation, so I'm glad we're doing it. And thank you for being so open about so many different things. Uh, I think everybody appreciates your openness, and
Yeah,
just it's great to see. I mean, um, I think it gives as well a lot of hope to people that you're not going to end up a messed up person. Like,
great.
it's awesome seeing you here, and um, just obviously acknowledging who you are and what afflicts you, but also being able to now you know after seeking resources and help and all that to be living um, a good life and things like that.
Yeah, I would say recovery is possible. Like you might still have some anxiety and some depression um, that stays with you, but it is possible to feel better. And I when I was in it when I was younger, I really never saw myself getting to this point. Um, but it's a much different feeling now. And being able to be open about it and talk about it is really helpful. So thank you. And just like I said, stacking up your resources, stacking up your coping skills, and stacking up the positive relationships in your life. And um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for
much.
being on.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.